All right. Greetings, my fellow thrill lovers and traveling thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful land of enchantment, which is also known as New Mexico. And today's date is Monday, October 24th, 2016. Ooh, man, I've just been like checking on some of the stuff on YouTube and Twitter and all that good stuff. Got to do a few things on my vehicle and buy some stuff before hitting the road. Try to make this as soon as possible, but we'll keep you posted. Yeah, so looks like a lot of stuff is being exposed. Of course, WikiLeaks is still bombing. Some people claim that their just live is just fraudulent. Well, look at it this way. What's been happening, especially on the political realm, is these folks are wearing no clothes. So that's how I see it, and of my a person like myself been keeping tabs, being like geopolitically inclined for a good period of time. But like I said, it's lots of disinfo out there, a lot of finger pointing, and still doing the same old song and dance. They think it's the 1960s and 80s and 90s. Sorry to hear about that, but a lot of you folks are being exposed, wearing nothing but a leaf between your legs. So speaking of that, I'm just gonna do mainly on everyone's favorite candidate, allegedly, the least popular, I would say, Hillary Clinton. Be a few topics on here about her because hey, the lamestream media is focusing on Trump, which I'm not. Like I say, I'm not gonna go praising him, but it's like there's all these witch hunting fetishes. However, this is what Kurt Nemo has to say from newsbuds.com. This one's entitled Missing from Hillary Clinton's Email. Saudis Work with CIA to Create Terror. And it came out today, to be exact, as it reads here. Hillary Clinton's email to her current campaign manager, Don Podesta, dated August 17, 2014, implicates Qatar and Saudi Arabia as the main logistical and financial supporters of the Islamic State. In the email, Clinton recommended the United States use its diplomatic and more traditional intelligence assets to bring pressure on the governments of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, but to put them in a position of balancing policy between their ongoing competition to dominate the Sunni world and the consequences of serious U.S. pressure. Yes, so Queen Hillary is trying to tell them, you got to do it my way. Even though I'm a baggy old puss bag. And I said baggy bag twice. I'm sorry about that. That's a walking abscess. Trying to tell everyone how to do their job. All right, as I proceed here, Secretary of State Clinton's proposal appears to be a reaction of growing awareness of the role Gulf monarchies have played in supporting and funding not only the Islamic State and al-Nusra, but a constellation of jihadi groups in the Middle East. Left unmentioned by Clinton is the fact the United States, under a number of administrations, has worked closely with Gulf monarchies to spread the Sunni Wahhabism across the Muslim world. Okay, but part of the New World Order plan. Hallelujah, all right? The financial elite in the West played a direct role in the spread of Wahhabism, excuse me, smack me. In 1976, Saudi Prince Mohammed Al Faisal established a Faisal Islamic Bank of Egypt, or a short word, FIBE, F-I-B-E, Ankrium. Several founding members were leading members of the Muslim Brotherhood, including Blind Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman, implicated and in the first World Trade Center bombing in February 1993. Ooh, can we say coincidence? The Muslim Brotherhood became an MI6 and later a CIA asset the covert war and assassination plot against the nationalist pan-Arab leader in Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser. All right, so all you folks out there, Tea Partiers, are going after the Muslim Brotherhood. You actually are going after the MI6 and CIA, right? Hey, assets to them. Oh, how astonishing, right? Five, and the rise of the Islamic banking following the dramatic increased oil prices in 1973 are closely associated with neoliberal financial policies and the philosophy of one of the Chicago School of Economics and the monetary prescriptions of the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. Five, works closely with the infamous Bank of Credit and Commerce International, a renegade bank used to fund covert terrorist activity and launder money, sell illegal weapons, and facilitate the international drug trade. After BCCI crashed and burned in 1991, investigators discovered it held $589 million in unrecorded deposits, $245 million which were replaced with five. BCCI consisted of a complex alliance of intelligence agencies, multinational corporations, weapons dealers, drug traffickers, terrorists, global bankers, and high-ranking government officials, writes Tim DeGraw. And there's a link for that too, right? Yeah, you can check that link out yourself. It's under global research. Oh yeah, it was a while back too, so definitely check that out, man. Woo-hoo-hoo. And one moment, I'll just, I had to do a little verification there. Yep, it's still up there. Great. And I will proceed here. The Muslim Brotherhood also established a Al-Taqwa Bank in 1988. It funded radical Wahhabi groups, including Al-Qaeda. The bank was associated with state-said Ramadan, one of the Muslim Brotherhood's top leaders. Ramadan was the son-in-law of Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood. He also helped the Saudi monarch establish the Muslim World League in 1962. The organization would later fund al-Qaeda and numerous other terror groups. Declassified Swiss documents from the 1960s reveal Ramadan was an asset of the CIA and British intelligence. So then, are they organic? No, he's not organic either. Absolutely not. It is no exaggeration to say that Ramadan is an ideological grandfather of Osama bin Laden, but Ramadan, the Muslim Brotherhood, and their Islamist allies might never have been able to plant the seeds that sprouted into Al Qaeda had they not been treated as U.S. allies during the Cold War, and they have not received both overt and covert support from Washington, writes investigative journalist Robert Dreyfus. I'm not going to say Richard Dreyfus, Robert Dreyfus. In addition to funding radical Islamic groups, the Saudis helped establish the so-called Safari Club in 1976. The chief instigator of the group was Alexandre de Marenchis, head of the French External Intelligence Service, SDECE. Like the BCCI, the Safari Club funded off-the-books terror operations that worked closely with Al-Mukhabarat Al-Amama, the Saudi intelligence organization, Kamal Adam, and then his nephew, Prince Turki. Adam acted as a channel between Henry Kissinger and Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt and former member of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Safari Club was run by Saudi arms dealers Adnan Khashoggi of Iran-Contra fame. He has also had connections to the BCCI. According to author Joe Trento, the Safari Club preferred working with rogue faction of the CIA made up of agents close to ex-CIA Director George Bush Sr. and decorated CIA officer Theodore Shackley. The private shadow spy organization within the CIA, according to Trento, was organized during an effort by the Carter administration to reform the agency following revelations of the Church Committee in the mid-1980s. See Peter Dale Scott, The Road to 9/11, Wealth, Empire, and the Future of America. Bush cemented strong relations with the intelligence services of both Saudi Arabia and the Shah of Iran. He worked closely to Kamal Adam, the said of Saudi intelligence, brother-in-law of King Faisal, and an early BCCI insider, Scott writes. During a May 1979 meeting of the globalist Bilderberg Group, the British historian Bernard Lewis presented a British-American strategy which endorsed the radical Islam Brotherhood movement behind Iran's Khomeini in order to promote balkanization of the entire Muslim Near East along tribal and religious lines. Lewis argued that the West should encourage autonomous groups such as the Kurds, Armenians, Lebanese, Maronites, Ethiopian Copts, Azerbaijani Turks, and so forth. The chaos would spread in what he termed the Arc of Crisis, which would spill over into the Muslim regions of the Soviet Union. And this is from this book by F. William Endegal, A Century of War, Anglo-American Oil Politics and the New World Order, page 172 to be exact. The previous year, the CIA began training Islamic militants in Pakistan as part of an effort to destabilize neighboring Afghanistan and draw in the Soviet Union. Robert Gates, who would become CIA director and later Secretary of Defense under Obama, recalled a meeting held on March 30th, 1979, under Secretary of Defense Walter Slocum proposed sucking the Soviets into a Vietnam quagmire. President Carter formally approved covert aid to the CIA-supported Afghan Mujahideen in July. And you can look that up, Robert Gates from the Shadows, and the ultimate insider stories of 5 presidents and how they won the Cold War. That's in page 145. So there's a link for that. You can check it out yourselves. The CIA became the grand coordinator purchasing and arranging the manufacture of Soviet-style weapons from Egypt, China, Poland, Israel, and elsewhere, or supplying their own, arranging for military training by Americans, Egyptians, Chinese, and Iranians, hitting up Middle Eastern countries for donations, notably Saudi Arabia, which gave many hundreds of millions of dollars in aid each year, totaling probably more than $1 billion, pressuring and bribing Pakistan, with whom recent American relations have been very poor, to rent out its country as a military staging area and sanctuary, putting the Pakistan Director of Military Operations, Brigadier Mian Mohammed Asval, onto the CIA payroll to ensure Pakistani cooperation, writes Phil Gasper. According to Dreyfus, America's alliance with the Afghan Islamists long predated the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, had its roots in the CIA activity in Afghanistan in the 1960s and in the early mid-1970s. The Afghan Jihad spawned civil war in Afghanistan in the late 1980s, gave the rise to the Taliban, and got Osama bin Laden started on building Al-Qaeda. You see that everything's like connecting here. The line between radical Islam in Afghanistan in the 1980s and the Islamic State remains unbroken. There is a direct correlation between Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and the Islamic State in Iraq that originated with Tazim, Qaidat al-Jihad Bilad al-Rafidan, aka Al-Qaeda in Iraq. AQI was a subject of Pentagon Black Op and propaganda campaign treating the Iraqi resistance following Bush's invasion in 2013. Hillary Clinton's emails makes it appear the Saudi monarch is primarily responsible for the logistical and financial support of the Islamic State. In fact, the Islamic State is not the monolithic threat that is portrayed as by the government as its media. It's a loose confederation of jihadi groups sharing a similar ideology based in Saudi Wahhabism. Many of those groups are now receiving direct financial and military support from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United States, and others. As Secretary of State, Clinton spearheaded an effort to arm and train moderate Syrian jihadists and overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad. After Obama authorized the CIA efforts to train and arm the jihadists. In 2013, the agencies used Saudi money to finance the project. The New York Times reported in January, in addition to Saudi Arabia's vast oil reserves and role as a spiritual anchor of the Sunni Muslim world, the long intelligence relationship helps explain why the United States has been reluctant to openly criticize Saudi Arabia for its human rights abuses, its treatment of women, and its support for the extreme strain of Islam, Wahhabism, that has inspired many of the very terrorist groups the United States is fighting. More accurately, the United States is reluctant to criticize its Wahhabi partner and seriously endanger the neocon spawned arc of crisis, carefully designed to divide and balkanize the Arab and Muslim Middle East. Hillary Clinton clarified the objective in an email dated November 30th, 2015. The best way to help Israel deal with Iran's growing nuclear capability is to help the people of Syria to overthrow the regime of Bashar Assad. Clinton writes, bringing down Assad will not only be a massive boon to Israel's security, it would also ease Israel's understandable fear of losing its nuclear monopoly. And that link there, I'm gonna see. I'm just like winging it at the time being, but it is like I said, my friends, birds of feather flock together, right? And Hillary Clinton looks like she's wearing no clothes, and it looks like it's from WikiLeaks, and they have problems getting it in there. Oh, really? So is there censorship happening? I believe so. So, okay, I think I know what happened. One moment here, folks. I gotta do a little technical error here, but there's a WikiLeaks on there on Clinton's emails, which is number 81328. So if you folks want to check that out, definitely do it, man. So definitely do it. Definitely do it. See here? Yeah, so trying to get things going here. It looks like am I back on? Let me see. Got my signal back on? Oh yeah, okay, cool. Let's see if we do it one more time. But it is a nice job by Kurt Nemo. He used to be with Infowars.com too. So yep, here it is right here. Oh yeah, you could definitely hit that link, and it came out. Wow, man, January 1st, 2001, new Iran and Syria 2 doc. And it says it right here. I don't know what he did in those days. Look, okay, well, I don't know how accurate that is. However, it says right here the best way to help Israel to deal with the growing nuclear capability is to help the people of Syria to overthrow the regime of Assad. And here's a nice little email here. Libya was an easier case, but other than laudable purpose of saving Libyans from likely attacks of Gaddafi regime. All right, well, definitely you can look this up yourselves. So, oh, well. This is very interesting. Well, like I said, my friends, you always got to look at the bigger picture. So, but yeah, it's a good article. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of hypocrisy is going on. Even Hillary Clinton's involved. It's been going way back. And of course, she like I said, she believes she's above everybody. So definitely, you spread this word out to everyone you know, even my this episode. I am going to put all the footnotes on there. And yeah, this is more power, my friend. Organized chaos, right? Okay, well, next one here came from original antiwar.com by Ted Snyder and came out yesterday. It says here Hillary Clinton knew Saudis were funding extremists. Surprise! The leaked Hillary Clinton emails include a memo on September 17th, 2014 that discusses the U.S. response to ISIS. The key line in the memo is a 4 point that says that based on Western intelligence, U.S. intelligence, and sources in the region, she knows that the government of Qatar and Saudi Arabia are providing clandestine financial and logistical support to ISIS and other radical groups in the region. But though this revelation is interesting news, it is not really news at all. It is only historical amnesia and the short attention span of the U.S. media that made this leaked email news. Clinton discusses Qatar and Saudi Arabia's financial support of ISIS and Al Qaeda in the context of a strategic approach to the problem and as not as discovery because it was not a discovery by 2014 at all. Clinton knew because everyone in the Obama administration knew. Almost coincidentally, with Clinton's emails on October 2nd, 2014, according to Patrick Coburn's The Rise of the Islamic State, Vice President Biden openly stated our allies in the region were our largest problems in Syria. Were our largest problem in Syria. They poured hundreds of millions of dollars and tens of thousands of tons of weapons into anyone who would fight against Assad, except that the people who were being supplied were al-Nusra and al-Qaeda and the extremist elements of jihadists. All of a sudden, everybody awakened because this outfit called ISIL, which was an al-Qaeda in Iraq, which when they were essentially thrown out of Iraq, found open space and territory in eastern Syria, worked with al-Nusra, who declared a terrorist group early on, and we could not convince our colleagues to stop supplying them. Like Clinton, Biden talks about Saudi financial support for ISIS and al-Qaeda, not a shocking recent discovery about an ally, but as an established premise and an approach to the problem, and that's because it was not a shocking recent discovery. 2 years earlier, on August 12, 2012, a classified Defense Intelligence Agency information intelligence report made the rounds through the U.S. intelligence community, including the CIA, FBI, State Department, and CENTCOM. Section 8C of the Defense Intelligence Agency report says, if the situation unravels, there is a possibility of establishing a declared or undeclared Salafist principality in eastern Syria, Hazaka and Derzor, and goes on to say that isn't exactly what the supporting powers to the opposition want in order to isolate the Syrian regime. In the preceding section 7b, the powers that are supporting ISIS are identified as Western countries, the Gulf states, and Turkey. So 2 years before the leaked Clinton memo, the Clinton State Department knew that Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states were supporting ISIS. In May 2015, at a meeting at Camp David between President Obama, the princes of the Gulf Cooperation Council, that knowledge was reiterated. According to David Ignatius of the Washington Post, at a summit, Obama and other U.S. officials urged Gulf leaders who are funding the opposition to keep control of their clients so that a post-Assad regime isn't controlled by extremists from the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda. Again, Obama knew that the Gulf leaders were funding the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. This is great. I'm sorry. And finally, a full 5 years before the recently released memo, in December of 2009, Hillary Clinton sent a State Department cable that already cleared stated that Saudi Arabia remains a critical financial support of Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and other terrorist groups. The cable goes on to say it has been an ongoing challenge to persuade Saudi officials to treat terrorist financing emanating from Saudi Arabia as a strategic priority. So, although the September 2014 memo is important as an additional piece of evidence, it is not news. Clinton's State Department was in possession of that information 2 years earlier, and she had already discussed in the State Department's cable 3 years before that. While interesting is not that the White House and the State Department discovered that the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda were being supported and financed by Saudi Arabia and Qatar, but that they knew it from the beginning. Yep. More information, my friends, more smoking guns. That this Jezebelian harlot to the One World Order and her nefarious cohorts or lackeys, whatever you want to call them, have knowledge on what is going on. And all you folks that still want to support this witch, come on. How much more do you need to know about this person is nothing more than an unmeritable candidate and a treasonous politician? All right? And loves war because she don't have to do it. She wants everyone else to do her dirty work. That's how come she looks like really despicable. But like we said, all part of the global family. All right, so enough of that rant. And this one here came from the American thinker David T. Hardy. Came out, I think it was today. Is it today? Yeah, I think it came out today, if I'm correct, right? I'll find out here. Let me see. It actually came out yesterday. That's what I thought. But it had a good little synopsis. And it says here, Hillary Clinton and the chain of command at Waco. Yep, there's more on Hillary Clinton. Okay, and that's what we'll go on here. Many politicians have skeletons in their closet. Hillary Clinton has a cemetery with the sign reading Waco. The 1993 Waco showdown began when authorities rushed to the communal home of a religious group, killing 6 of them and losing 4 agents in return. The FBI then besieged the place with tanks and other armored vehicles and ended up with the armored vehicle pushing holes in the building and injecting massive quantities of CS tear gas. When that didn't work, the tanks began demolishing the building, eventually smashing about a quarter of it and damaging the remainder. A fire broke out and 74 people died in the flames, including 21 children. It was the deadliest law enforcement operation in American history. After the tragic debacle, the Clinton administration claimed that Attorney Janet Reno had been solely responsible for the final assault. There had been no U.S. input during the siege, and at the end, President Clinton only acquiesced in a decision Reno had made. 23 years later, there are substantial evidence to doubt the truth of these claims. The evidence is strong that the Clinton White House was calling the shots and that Hillary played a prominent role. The first evidence of this came when Vincent Foster, deputy counselor to the president and close friends of both Clintons, was found dead in Fort Marcy Park outside D.C. The cause was attributed to suicide. When the FBI asked Mrs. Foster what might have the most stressed her husband, she cited the travel office scandal and Waco. The FBI 302 report noted Lisa Foster believes that Foster was horrified when the Branch Davidian complex burned. Foster believed that everything was his fault. But why would Foster felt guilty, let alone to the point of despair, over the decision Janet Reno had made without White House input? How could he have thought everything was his fault? A second piece of information surfaced after the FOIL web lawsuit forced release of videotape made during the siege, and an FBI supervisor tells his men that critical decisions are being made in the White House and passed through that guy Hummel, whatever his name is. After Webster Webb Hummel had been Hillary Clinton's law partner back in Arkansas, Bill Clinton had just appointed him Associate Attorney General, the number 3 man at Justice. But the FBI supervisor is quite specific. Hummel is not calling the shots, but relaying decisions made in the White House. Who in the White House was giving Hummel his marching orders? Linda Tripp, the White House secretary and Foster associate, described the real Waco chain of command on a Larry King Live. Vincent Foster, Mrs. Clinton, Webb Hummel, Janet Reno, and she described their reaction to the fire and the fiery death of 21 children. She says here, a special bulletin came on CNN showing the atrocity at Waco and the children, and his whole body slumped, and his face turned white. He was absolutely crushed knowing the part he had played. and he had played the part at Mrs. Clinton's direction. Her reaction, on the other hand, was heartless, and I can only tell you what I saw. Foster had a special Waco file. Deborah Gorham, his personal secretary, said he had a cabinet reserved for the most sensitive files. There were two. One was Sean Hayden, a White House staffer, and the other was Waco. After his death, Foster's Waco file somehow vanished. Secret Service agent Henry O'Neill later testified before a congressional committee that on the night of Foster's death, he encountered Maggie Williams leaving Foster's office with two handfuls of folders. Williams denies removing any files. When called upon to explain her presence in Foster's office that night, she claimed she had gone in the irrational hope that she would find her colleagues still alive there. Did Hillary call the shots at Waco? If she did, it would explain another great mystery. By his second term, Clinton has absolutely no use for Janet Reno. Journalist Taylor Branch wrote that Clinton fairly howled when describing Reno's actions, and she had not been able to trust her for 4 years. Clinton's primary upsets were Reno's appointment of independent counsel to investigate his administration's many scandals, the firing and framing of the White House travel office staff, the Whitewater investment scandal, the death of Vince Foster, the abuse of FBI files, Waco, and Clinton's sexual affair with Monica Lewinsky. It would never occur to Clinton to blame himself for creating the scandals rather than Reno for dealing with them. Yet, said he felt stuck with Reno's despite his resentments. Stuck with her? He was the president and just re-elect. One phone call could have removed her. Presidents commonly change cabinet members, especially at the end of the first term. In his 8 years, Clinton had 2 Secretaries of State, 3 Secretaries of Treasury and of Defense, and 4 Secretaries of Commerce. But in the cabinet, official Clinton most resented and distrusted became a long-serving Attorney General in the 158 years. She is topped only by William Wirt, who served from 1817 to 1829. Dick Morris, then Bill Clinton's advisors, felt that Reno had kept her job by threatening to tell the truth about Waco, but who could the truth then have damaged? By Clinton's second term, Foster was dead and Hubbell in prison for 4 years for fraud. Of the chain of command Miss Tripp described, only one person was left invulnerable: Hillary Clinton. I'm just looking down here. Yep, it's the same thing. Yep, it's the same thing. Absolutely. Well, well, well. Like I said, there's more dirt than usual, my friends. Is that something something you have to really look at? And of course, you can look up the FLIR project, FLIR, and it proves, based on his knowledge, because he created the infrared cameras and lenses, proved that the ATF was responsible, the government was responsible for setting that place on fire. Because I think it's called Waco Tiers of Endangerment, and I've seen there's like bonus tracks on there. You can probably look it up on YouTube. I might just put that in there too, just in case, just to let you folks know about it. And yeah, like I said, my friends, this is really insane, and this is why. Like I remember this time 24 years ago, and at first I wasn't so sure about the Waco thing, but there's some questions, and I actually had to take the initiative to watch the videos myself from CNN, and I found it totally unacceptable what the federal government agents did and the ATF and so forth. And of course, I try to play the ping pong ball, okay, with Janet Reno, which I am not fond of, okay, just to let you folks know. I lived in Miami-Dade County, so I know how she was back then as district attorney in the 80s. But that's not the case right now. But the bottom line is this: more dirt, more tyrannical practices, okay, from Hillary Clinton and her entourage. This is a person you wanna support. Even that chump who wants free crap, Bernie Sanders, is endorsing her. Come on, maybe a slap in the face to you Sanders supporters out there too. You should have punched him right in the mouth. No, actually, I'll probably give him a penile microphone because I'll be assault and battery on an elderly. Okay, just give him a penile microphone and let him speak to it. He deserves it too. Yeah, so I'm just gonna put that in there. So be yeah, cool. So what I'm gonna be doing, definitely gonna add the FLIR video part one, and you can hit 2, 3, and 4 is in that same channel subscription of what's that guy's name? One moment, I'm just gonna check it out here. Yeah, Blackadder TV. So yeah, Waco FLIR Imaging Part One. They have I think they have Part Two and Three, and the person that was coordinating this was actually the one that created this technological video lens, and it has a lot of proof that the ATF or the government agents were responsible for the burning of the compound. So don't believe in the governmental deception, okay? So that's why I like to let you folks know. Many of you may not be born at the time, but you have the right to know the truth. That's why when I do these shows, hey, I'm not making money off this. I have no complaints, all right? But you folks got to know what's happening, and it's okay if you share information with me. So that's why I said you can do that. That'll be great, and we can build a more healthy dialogue. All right. So speaking of Clinton, this came out from Next News Network, and it's a real good story, real good report done by Gary Franchi, and it's from the website we got this from on Right Wing News. Came out a few days ago, and what's his name? James O'Keefe of Project Terrorism is filing a formal complaint with the FEC, which is the Federal Election Commission, against Hillary Clinton's campaign, the DNC. O'Keefe has released 2 fantastic videos this week, one on Hillary and the DNC paying people to gin up violence at the Trump rallies, and one on voter fraud. So I'm going to play you the audio version of this, and I'm going to have absolutely add the actual video too, so you can folks don't sweat it. But Gary Franchi, he wants this out there to spread the word, so I got the thumbs up. Hopefully he won't bust my chops, but check it out.
News alert.
Got some really good news for you, yes. Finally, we can say Hillary Clinton is going down. It seems like we say that every day, but the fact of the matter is, it's true. There's so many crimes being committed by this campaign. If enough people realize it, then she would be in prison tomorrow. Yes, the Project Veritas O'Keefe has just filed a suit against Clinton and the DNC. There he is. Yes, Teresa Monroe Hamilton for Right Wing News reports that James O'Keefe's Project Veritas is now filing a formal complaint with the FEC against Hillary Clinton's campaign and the DNC. Now, before I go any further, I have to say that, my friends, we need to say a prayer for this young man, because he is now stepping into the lion's den. If it was one thing to release those videos, the videos are out. But now he is filing a formal complaint against the FEC, and he needs the angels of heaven protecting him against the demons of Hillary Clinton and her cohorts. Because we do not fight. We do not fight against flesh and blood, but of principalities and powers. And we know just how evil and deceptive and filthy that the Clinton campaign is. And the long list of mysterious deaths that surround these people. The last thing that we need to see is this young man show up on that Clinton death list. Well, you know, Hillary Clinton has him in his crosshairs now. Now, O'Keefe, as you know, has released 2 remarkable videos. And as you know, one video, it's about Hillary and the DNC paying people to create violence, to provoke violence at Trump rallies. The other one regarding straight up voter fraud. I mean, they actually said it on the video, voter fraud. Now, in the wake of those videos, the individuals in the videos, Scott Foble and Creamer, whatever his name is, have now been fired and resigned from their positions. Yes, Scott Fovel left Americans United for Change, fired. The videos went so viral now, the media has been forced to cover them, much to the regret of Hillary Clinton and the Democratic campaign. Now, I'm going to read you his actual complaint. They state the criminal conspiracy involves the knowing and willful creation of coordinated expenditures from prohibited corporate sources, as is detailed numerous times in the Veritas transcript attached as Exhibit A. The supposedly independent speech and actions of third-party groups were directed, controlled, or puppeteered by HFA or the DNC. They continue in the complaint, indeed, the record establishes not just simple violations of the FECA's coordination provisions, but ongoing, knowing and willful evasion of federal election law requirements through a complicated scheme. They continue, because this conspiracy involves large numbers of employees, heightened travel, production, and distribution costs, and because of the nationwide scale of the operation upon information and belief, this triggers criminal penalties under 52 U.S. Code Section 3019, paragraph D1AI. They write, by failing to abide by the law, these respondents misled the public about the true identity of speakers and funding sources for political protests and advocacy campaigns. This sort of evasion undermines the public trust in the electoral process and allows elite political operatives to operate above the law. God bless you, James O'Keefe. God bless and protect you, son. I pray for you, and I pray for your family. I pray for your safety. Thank you for what you have done. Thank you for what you have uncovered. And thank you for standing in the gap for this nation to uncover the crimes of the Clinton campaign and all those who would seek to undermine this great nation. You, sir, are an American patriot. One of the last. And I thank you for that. What are your...
Well, what did I say? That's right. Mr. O'Keefe, fight the good fight. May your guardian spirits be with you, for you and your family, okay? You're not alone in this battle, remember that. And I know they may claim he was a convicted criminal, but you know what? That's the only thing they could throw at. But you got these lamestream medias like the Comedy News Network who still want to defend this Jezebelian harlot. Okay? And if they say, oh, but she supports the unions, you're being used. She supports the blacks, you're being used. The Muslims, you're being screwed, you're getting screwed. On and on. Or other words, etc. Hey, I didn't like her 24 years ago. I care less about her now. Okay? So, don't think I'm just some clown that don't have a clue, and I'm not Wally Cleaver. End of story. Next one here came from The Intercept. Came out a couple days ago. Yeah, a few days ago. And it says here, major new court ruling says even the president can't declare torture lawful. In a robust ruling in favor of Abu Ghraib detainees at appellate court, ruled Friday that torture is such a clear violation of the law that is beyond the power of even the president to declare such a conduct lawful. The ruling from a unanimous panel of judges on the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals reinstates a lawsuit against a military contractor for his role in the torture of 4 men in the notorious prison in Iraq, Last June, a district court ruled that a cloud of ambiguity surrounds the definition of torture and that despite anti-torture laws, the decision of torture was a political correction that could not be judged by the courts. That ruling echoed the widely discredited legal theories of the Bush administration, which argued that the war on terror gave the president an inherent authority to indefinitely detain and torture terror suspects and conduct mass surveillance on Americans' international communications, but the Fourth Circuit Court soundly rejected that theory, saying that the United States has clear laws against torture detainees that apply to the executive branch. While executive officers can declare the military reasonableness of conduct amounting to torture, it is beyond the power of even the president to declare such conduct lawful, wrote appellate Judge Barbara Keenan, writing for the unanimous panel. The case in question revolves around the contractors from CACI Primer Technologies who participated in the interrogations of 4 men in 2004, subjecting them to extreme temperatures, electric shocks, broken bones, death threats, and sexual abuse. The Center for Constitutional Rights originally filed suit against the CACI on behalf of the detainees in 2008. The company has been seeking to dismiss the lawsuit ever since, and this is the fourth time it reached the appeals court. The plaintiffs and advocates at the Center for Constitutional Rights celebrated the decision. Torture is illegal and can never be a policy choice, said Catherine Gallagher, a senior staff attorney with the Center for Constitutional Rights. As the court made clear, neither the military nor the president, let alone a government lawyer, has the power to declare torture legal. Salah Hassan, one of the plaintiffs, said in a statement, "Today, part of justice was achieved, that this is something wonderful, not only for me and the other plaintiffs, but for all the just causes in the world. The lawsuit will go back to the district court for consideration of the detainee's claim. The CCR previously won a settlement in 2013 on behalf of 71 Abu Ghraib detainees against L3 Services, another military contractor at Abu Ghraib." Well, I gotta say that is awesome, and this is completely unacceptable on using these measures to get information, because even the president can't do it. So, far as I'm concerned, end the war on terror, shred it to oblivion, stop wasting our money. I'm tired of being extorted by some tyrannical scumbags in Washington, D.C. This is by Alex Emmons, by the way. Great article, Alexander. And we all remember the cruel and unusual punishment, which is the Eighth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution under the Bill of Rights. So there's no excuses. Like I remember when Dick Cheney talked about waterboarding. Did that Darth Vader pus bag tried it? He should. And anyone else. I remember there's a claim that Barbara Bachman said the same thing. Throw them all in there. Torture them. See if they love it. I bet you they'll be out there. They'll be the first one coughing up water out of their lungs. Go, I can't do this. But, so, you know what? I'm glad this ruling favored them, because it can be any of us. That's what you got to think about, my friends. And the name of the war on terror is a conflagration with this people, not just the United States, but the world. Okay, next one here came from Global Research. Looks like it came out yesterday, if I'm correct. Yeah, it says here, this is by Joseph Thomas, entitled "Fighting versus Funding Terrorism: America's Ironic Two-Faced War on Terror." And it says, here's a quote: "Rarely ever does hypocrisy align so succinctly as it does within pages of American policy and media coverage. U.S. policy think tank, the Brookings Institution, recently provided an extreme example of this paper titled 'A Convenient Terrorism Threat,' penned by Daniel Byman. The paper starts by claiming not all countries that suffer from terrorism are innocent victims doing their best to fight back. Many governments, including several important U.S. allies, simultaneously fight and encourage the terrorist groups on their own soil. On their soil. President George W. Bush famously asked worldwide after 9/11 whether they were with us or with the terrorists. But these rulers answered yes. And there's if I'm correct, that quote, "You with us or with the terrorists," came from Vladimir Putin. There's some claims on that. I could be mistaken, but remember, it's government. They think alike. Come to tyrannical governments. They think alike and smell the same. Yeah. So I'll proceed. Some governments, including at times Russia, Egypt, Turkey, and Pakistan, among others, hope to have it both ways. They use the presence of terrorists to win sympathy abroad and discredit peaceful foes at home, even while fighting back vigorously enough to look plausible, but not forcefully enough to solve the problem. The two-faced approach holds considerable appeal for some governments, but it hugely complicates U.S. counterterrorism efforts, and the U.S. shouldn't just live with it. Byman then begins labeling various nations, Somalia as a basket case, Iran as a straightforward state sponsor of terrorism, and attempts to frame Russia's struggle against terrorism in Chechnya and somehow disingenuous over politically motivated. Byman also attempts to claim Syrian President Bashar al-Assad intentionally released terrorists from prison to help escalate violence around the country and justify a violent crackdown. This despite reports from Western journalists as early as 2007 revealing U.S. intentions to use these terrorists to overthrow the governments of Syria and Iran specifically, the New Yorker would reveal. The U.S. is as much a sponsor of terrorism in reality as Byman claim others are in fiction. But worse than Byman's international mischaracterizations and lies of omissions regarding U.S. ally strikes like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Israel's overt global spanning sponsorship of terrorism is the fact that not only the U.S. itself engaged in sponsoring terrorism as it poses as fighting against it globally, the Brookings Institution and Byman have specifically and publicly called for funding, training, and arming of designated foreign terrorist groups in pursuit of self-serving geopolitical objectives. Indeed, Daniel Byman is one of the several signatories of the 2009 Brookings Institution report, which passed to Persia options for a new American strategy towards Iran. The report not only reveals the blueprints of using supposedly peaceful and democratic protests as cover for violent U.S.-sponsored subversion and was precisely done in Syria beginning in 2011. It specifically lists a U.S. State Department designated foreign terrorist organizations as a potential U.S. proxy and violently rising up against and eventually overthrowing the government in Tehran. The report would explicitly state our emphasis. Perhaps the most prominent and certainly most controversial, the opposition that has attracted attention as a potential U.S. proxy is the NCRI, National Council of Resistance of Iran, the political movement established by MEK, Mojahedin Khalq. Critics believe the group to be undemocratic and unpopular and indeed anti-American. In contrast, the group's champions contend that the movement's long-standing opposition to the Iranian regime and record of successful attacks on and intelligence gathering operations against the regime make it worthy of U.S. support. They also argue that the group is no longer anti-American and question the merit of earlier accusations. Raymond Tanter, one of the group's supporters in the United States, contends that the MEK and the NCRI are allies for the regime change in Tehran and also act as a useful proxy for gathering intelligence. The MEK's greatest intelligence coup was the provision of intelligence in 2002 that led to the discovery of a secret site in Iran for enriching uranium. The report then admits MEK's status as a designated foreign terrorist organization and that it has targeted and killed both American officers and civilians in the past, our emphasis. Despite its defenders' claim, the MEK remains on the U.S. government's list of foreign terrorist organizations. In the 1970s, the group killed 3 U.S. officers and 3 civilian contractors in Iran. During the 1979-1980 hostage crisis, the group praised the decision to take American hostages, and Elaine Scalino reported that while the group leaders publicly condemned the 9/11 attacks, within the group celebrations were widespread. The Brookings Institution also admits in its report that undoubtedly MEK continues to carry out undeniable terrorist activity against political and civilian targets with Iran, and notes that if the MEK is to be successfully used as a proxy against U.S. proxy against Iran, it would need to be delisted as a foreign terrorist organization, our emphasis. Undeniably, the group has conducted terrorist attacks often excused by the MEK's advocates because they are directed against the Iranian government. For example, in 1981, the group bombed the headquarters of the Islamic Republic Party, which was then the clerical leadership's main political organization, killing an estimated 70 senior officials. More recently, the group has claimed credit for over a dozen mortar attacks, assassinations, and other assaults on the Iranian civilian and military targets between 1998 and 2001. You see what's happening here, right? At the very least, to work more closely with the group, at least in overt manner, Washington would need to remove it from the list of foreign terrorist organizations. And eventually, that's precisely what was done. MEK would be delisted by the State Department in 2012 and announced in the United States Department titled "Delisting of the Mujahideen Cause," which noted, with today's actions, the department does not overlook or forget MEK's past acts of terrorism, including its involvement in the killings of U.S. citizens in Iran in the 1970s and the attack on U.S. soil in 1992. The department has concerns about MEK as an organization, particularly with regard to allegations of abuse committed against its own members. The Secretary's decision today took into account the MEK's public renunciation of violence. The absence confirms acts of terrorism by the MEK for more than a decade and the cooperation, the peaceful closure of Camp Ashraf and their paramilitary base. Okay, so you heard it themselves, right? And who was Secretary of State at the time? Hillary Rodham Clinton. Hip hip hooray! Exactly. So we will continue on here. The MEK's inability to conduct violence in the decade preceding the U.S. State Department's decision was not because of an ideological commitment to nonviolence, but a matter of strategic limitations placed on a terrorist organization by Iraqi and Iranian security forces who were determined to liquidate and who forcibly disarmed the group. And even if the 2012 U.S. State Department decision was based on an alleged decade of nonviolence, the policymakers at the Brookings Institution who signed their name to which path to Persia, including Daniel Byman, certainly did not apply the same criteria in suggesting its use as an armed proxy. In the likelihood, had Iraq and Iran not successfully cornered and disarmed the group, it would be fighting America's proxy war against Tehran on both sides of the Iraq-Iran border. MEK fighters would be carrying out U.S.-backed armed violence against Iran and Iraq side by side other U.S.-backed terrorist groups operating across the region as part of America's current proxy war against Syria, Russia, and Iran. Daniel Byman of the Brookings Institution latest paper, even at face value, is disingenuous, full of international mischaracterizations meant to direct attention away from the U.S. and its closest allies' own sponsorship of terrorism amid a very much feigned war on terror. Understand that Byman quite literally signed his name to a policy paper promoting the arming and backing of a U.S. State Department designated foreign terrorist organization. Make his recent paper a lot more outrageous. What is also troubling, and as it's ironic, is that Byman not only signed his name to calls for arming a listed terrorist organization, he was also a staff member of the 9/11 Commission, according to his Georgetown University biography. Oh, really? Okay. That's why they did a real frugal investment, right, on the 9/11 investigation, which is another more than a monumental lie. A man involved in sorting out a terrorist attack who was also advocating closer cooperation with listed terrorist organizations is truly disturbing. A political and ethical bankruptcy of American foreign policy can be traced back to a policy establishment populated by unprincipled hypocrites like Byman and co-signatories of Brookings, which path to Persia. The U.S. certainly cannot convince other nations to abandon an alleged two-faced policy of promoting and fighting terrorism simultaneously when it stands as a global leader in its very practice. That's Joseph Thompson. That's from actually he's the stuff for New Atlas and New Eastern Outlook. Good stuff, by the way. Check out these sites, and he's good. So like I said, man, the same old song and dance when it comes to imperialism, correct? Absolutely. The military industrial complex, the grand chessboard. I can go on and on and on. Of course, the book Blowback. Read it. It's by surname is Johansson. So you go on Amazon, you can check it out. Hit the library about the CIA's how stuff like this backfired. So it's typical and traditional. Well. If you and I would have done this, our behinds would be thrown in prison, shackled like pigs. But them, they are special. Please, please, I'm gonna be your peasant. I'm gonna be your Uncle Tom to your vision. So that's how I look at it. Racketeering, RICO, extortion, financially, etc. Okay, finally, this one came from The Truth Out. And William Rivers Pitt is entitled Stop the Bombing, Stop the Wars. Of course, truthout.com or .org needs your support, folks, so donate money to them best you can, all right? Over a week ago, someone in Yemen flipped some missiles at the USS Mason, an American warship on patrol off the coast. It was determined that the whole Houthis, a group aligned with Iran, was responsible, even though the Pentagon admitted that they could not be sure who actually did the shooting. No matter, the Mason fired a twin salvo of cruise missiles into Yemen, which has already been banged up, for goodness sakes. And just like that, the United States become much more active participant in yet another Middle Eastern killing field. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Mali, Egypt, and Yemen, either through direct fighting, advising, and or arming of various participants, we have spread our martial wings over the region in a manner all too consistent with the fever dreams held close by our neoconservative cabal for the last quarter of a century. Remember, Project of a New American Century? They never left. They just got new jobs. PNAC for short. And you could put that link on there too. Saudi Arabia is pleased. It has been bombing Yemen for a while now, using American weapons and intelligence, killing thousands, including more than 100 mourners at a funeral this month. This is passing strange since the Saudi Arabian government is a boon ally of ISIS, also known as Daesh, the Sunni fighting force which congealed into lethal actor in Iraq and Syria after George W. Bush's war ended. Yep, assume. The U.S. is currently fighting ISIS in the city of Mosul and in Syria, who are our friends over there. Really? Who are our enemies? It depends on the time of day, who you ask, and where you are on the map. It also depends, of course, who is cutting us checks for the weapons. Mosul is a perfect example of the chaos we have unleashed in the region. The city has played host to fierce fighting ever since the 2003 U.S. invasion, and is today a rubble killing jar reminiscent of Aleppo to the west. ISIS took over Mosul several years ago and turned it into a stronghold, riddling the city with underground tunnels in a tactic highly similar to what the North Vietnamese Army and Viet Cong did in Vietnam many years ago. Right now, a rag coalition of Iraqi forces, U.S. advisors, Kurdish, Peshmerga, Shiite militia, and Sunni tribesmen are pushing into Mosul. None of these groups like or trust one another. For example, everyone is worried the Kurds will keep Mosul for themselves if they succeed in taking the city. Turkey entered the fray the other day by killing some 200 Kurdish militia members in a bombing raid. Meanwhile, ISIS littered Mosul with improvised explosive devices and other booby traps. They are continually hurling truck bombs and suicide squads at the advancing forces, the latter of which use those tunnels for the element of surprise to great effect. Mosul, in short, is the ultimate urban warfare nightmare. Close quarters, bombs everywhere, invisible foes, all surrounded by civilians seeking only to live through the day. Residents of Mosul, as the attack approaches, have joined the massive tidal flood of refugees seeking some semblance of safety from the carnage in the region. It will likely take years and the ocean of blood to secure the city, even that if that is accomplished, Mosul would be devastated. As with the cities Kirkuk, Ramadi, and Fallujah, Mosul will resemble a place that was dropped out of the sky to smash on the ground. The fight for Mosul has claimed its first American casualty. A U.S. serviceman was killed by an IED outside the city on Thursday. The chief petty officer is the fourth service member to die in Iraq since 2014 while serving what is called Operation Inherent Resolve. Some 5,000 U.S. troops are currently in Iraq, according to Reuters. The Pentagon this week played down any role for the U.S. forces in Iraq's battle to retake Mosul and said they would be behind the forward line of troops. But as the United States has increased its presence there, in Iraq this year to help in the Mosul fight, officials have acknowledged Americans will be closer to the action. Translation, there will be more because there are always more. You can count on it. One wonders how many people in the U.S. know about any of this. This is the only Cliff Notes version of the reality that is the Middle East today. Make no mistakes about it. All of this, every last little bit of it, was caused by war. We seeded the ground with Desert Storm, exacerbated with trauma, with years of missile strikes and debilitating sanctions, and put an exclamation point on the whole affair with the invasion and occupation of 2003. During those intervening years, we bombed water treatment plants in Iraq, which introduced sewage into the drinking water, which is a biological warfare by any other name. And that's not counting all the depleted uranium from our ordnance. When we toppled the Sunni government of Iraq and disbanded the Sunni Ba'ath Army, we gave birth to ISIS. The war caused a massive, persistent wave of refugees to flee into Syria to escape the fighting, which upended that country and gave ISIS a base of operations, along with the flood of willing recruits. The rest of the countries which are actively involved in fighting popped off like a string of firecrackers, and we have been bombing our own weapons over there for quite some time now, an accelerate financial windfall for the weapons dealers. The situation is so unfathomably confused that elements supported by the CIA found themselves in March of this year locked in active combat in Syria with elements supported by the Pentagon just another day at the office. All of this was caused by war, and the only situation we're being offered is more war. This grim alternative is underscored by the fact that either an blatantly bigoted fearmonger of an avowed war hawk is set to sit in the Oval Office come January. One will almost certainly lurch us into further conflict, while the other will likely do so deliberately. Defense spending will skyrocket, bodies will drop, new enemies will be made, and the war profiteers will laugh all the way to the bailed out banks. It has been this way for 25 years now. It will be this way tomorrow. Not so long ago, a strong and vocal anti-war movement came into vivid life again in the U.S. February of 2003 saw the largest gathering of anti-war demonstrators the world has ever witnessed, and the movement only grew from there. After 2008, lacking a shared enemy in George W. Bush, And due to simple exhaustion after so many years of struggle, the movement splintered and disintegrated. The gap left by the near absence allowed the war machine to grow, spread, and flourish. The escalation of violence only seems likely to continue during the next presidential administration, no matter who is sitting in that room. That is on us, and so it is our responsibility to shake off the doldrums of cynicism and despair. It is a daunting enterprise as we are almost back to square one again, but the alternatives do not bear contemplation. Freedom and change begin with a no. With people in the streets, a converge of raised voices with a decision to try to prove that what is does not always have to be. The anti-war movement must be reconstituted in strength and soon. It's been done before. It must be done again. Win or lose, have to try. We have to try. So let us once again rise. Absolutely correct. And it doesn't matter what your political views are or who you're supporting. We got to stop this monstrosity because when it hits us, they got to say they're the enemy. They're the bad guy. That's what the puppet masters want us to believe. A la 9/11. Remember that. That's why I always let people know when these political bobbleheads want to attack countries. I say, you go on the front line. Let's see how tough you are. And our brothers and sisters are serving. They're suffering dearly as well. We got to say, condemn the empire. Condemn world government. Always pay attention and stay vigilant. Doesn't matter who's in there. Got to put their feet to the fire. And that's all I'm going to say. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to this episode. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks, including my other archives that are on Spreaker. If you have any questions or comments, plus send me any information I find interesting. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, and Scene.life. Or you can email me at LokiLuck3, which is number 3, LokiLuck with the number 3 at gmail.com. Whatever you do, please deliver your correspondences with decorum. All right. I'm going to play an oldie in the metal realm, and hopefully I won't get blocked due to copyright. Just to let you folks know, I'm not making money off these songs. It's all voluntary, but something we can relate to. There's a band from New York City, metal band called Nuclear Assault, and it's probably their slow songs. It's titled The Plague, and it's featuring Dan Luker. He's to be in Anthrax and Brutal Truth. He's in Brutal Truth. So, yeah, it came out in the mid-late 80s. And they did some reunion tour last year in Europe, which is pretty cool. So hopefully they do one in the States, because I've seen them one time. They're cool. They're fun. And believe it or not, John Connolly, I believe the name was one of the first vocalists for Anthrax before Neil Turbin, to be exact. So, yep, I'm aging too, but you know what? I still feel great. But it's a good song. I like it. It's called The Plague. Environmental wars and all that, chemical warfare. We'll all die from the plague. We'll die from the plague, but we can stop it. All right, my friends. Thank you again for listening. Once again, thanks for listening. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.